I think that now that I am more mature in my career, I've been doing things for a long time. Admitting what you don't know is also okay. I think a lot of times, especially, if you're in your first leadership position and you're, maybe this isn't even probably only women, but if you're in your first leadership position or whatever, you're leading a cross-functional effort, you might feel like you have to have every single answer. I actually think that it's okay to say, I actually don't know this. I'll go figure it out, or I'll find a way to, to do it. But that's not actually something that I know how to do or that I've done before. I think is totally fine. And I'll give you a specific example just to illustrate this better. And I think, if you come up through marketing, right? Usually marketers are in one of three categories. You're a demand gen marketer, you're a product marketer, or you're like a brand content type of marketer, right? And when you go into a CMO role, you are not going to have deep experience on all three of those dimensions. Event marketing too, right? So there's just like so many different ways that you can come up. And so you have to be able to admit, and I had to do this when I got to WorkRamp, like I've come up through demand gen. I know a lot about the other parts of marketing. I've partnered with those before, but I haven't led it. And I haven't necessarily done all of the hands-on work. And then it goes back to what we were talking about. So you have to hire super well, but like, there's no way that I could have ever known, directly, perfectly how to do these other parts of the job. And I was very upfront about that.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Kristi Faltorusso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning customer success executive. I am so thrilled to introduce today's guest, Jack Foster, CMO at WorkRamp. Hi, Jack. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kristi. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm so thrilled to have you on. I know that your time at WorkRamp, you have been super busy and doing so much stuff over the past couple of years. So I'm excited to kind of showcase your story and really tell folks what you've been up to.
Yes, thank you. We have a lot to dive into. So I'm ready. I'm ready for
excellent
talk here.
Great. Well, listen, before we get to all the good stuff, I want to tell our listeners a little bit about you and share with them a little bit about WorkRamp and what you do in your current role as CMO. So let's get started there.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So I've been at WorkRamp for over 2.5 years, leading the marketing team. Started as a VP of marketing and made my way up to CMO. So we can definitely talk about that here. But WorkRamp, we are the learning cloud, building the world's first learning cloud. And what that means is we power all of your learning across your organization. So think about employee learning, things like employee onboarding, ongoing talent development, revenue enablement, all the way through customer education on the external side, partner training. We are one platform for all of your learning. So it has been a ton of fun leading the marketing organization. We as a marketing organization are small but mighty. We are about 6 people with our marketing operations team. That sits in a different team, but for all intents and purposes, 6 people leading the charge. And we can talk a lot about anything we've been working on. Super excited to dive into all the fun stuff. So.
Well, what I love is that actually how you and I met was I had previously used WorkRamp, and I used WorkRamp while we were at when I was at a company called IntelliShift as their VP of customer success. This is pre-pandemic or early pandemic. And I fell in love with the product. And it's rare that I say that. I will only be an advocate for a few pieces of technology, but we had really done a great job of using WorkRamp for one of the first use cases you talked about, which was on employee onboarding and like training and learning development. And it was not only so easy to use, but like all the features and functionality really helped ensure that we were enabling folks to do their best work.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. It was so fun to meet you. That was over 2 years ago.
I know, it's been crazy.
When I first had started, and have learned a lot from you as a leader in customer success. And, that's actually, one of the groups we sell into. So I've learned a ton from you, but thank you for saying that. We love to hear happy customers. And that's great to hear. Thank you, Kristi.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm sure while CMO has definitely been part of your trajectory, it's probably not what you thought you'd be doing when you were younger. So when you think back to little Jack, what did you initially think you were going to do as part of your career? What were you going to be when you grew up?
I still feel like I have a shot at this, but no, I'm just joking. I wanted to be an actress or a performer. I was always, singing and dancing and in plays and just loved performing ever since I was a little girl. And honestly, even through high school, I kind of thought I might have, a career in the performing arts. But obviously that didn't end up happening after college and everything. Still do love to perform. Although maybe a little bit more, at home now, not as publicly, but yeah, that's where I thought my career was going when I was a little girl.
All right. So share some context here. So I want to know two things. One, I want to hear favorite actress or somebody who inspired you, because I'm sure that there was some inspiration there. You've got lots to draw from. And if you were in a play, what was your favorite play that you were in or your favorite performance that you were a part of?
Oh my gosh, great questions. So honestly, my idol when I was in like second, third grade was Whitney Houston. I absolutely adored Whitney Houston.
Solid.
Best music. It was right when The Bodyguard had come out and that album was out. And I just my mom, I think, listened to it. So I loved it so much. And then my middle name is Whitney. So I feel like I kind of had this connection to her. So I just absolutely adored Whitney Houston when I was little and really, looked up to her. And then she was in The Bodyguard too. So actress.
Right.
I watched it at that age, but I knew that she was an actress. But she was probably the first that comes to mind for when I was a little kid. And then secondly, which plays were I in? I was in a few. My elementary school was actually very into performing arts. So we always were we called it an operetta every year. So, I got to do got to play a couple of different roles throughout that, but probably my favorite play I was in was actually when I was in 8th grade. I had just moved to California. I was at a brand new high school or middle school rather. Drama was my favorite class. I think it was the first period I had. And we decided to do Romeo and Juliet, which is I always had wanted to be in Romeo and Juliet. And while I didn't get to play Juliet, I did get to play Lady Capulet. But just even being in Romeo and Juliet was a huge, fun moment. And I'll actually follow on. Maybe I'll actually say my first favorite. I got to play Santa Claus in 3rd grade. So pretty cool for a little girl being able to play Santa Claus in The Night Before Christmas. So maybe I'll go with that one. But those are some fun
that's a solid role. That's a solid role. I was in one play ever, and it was Anything Goes. If you remember that one.
I don't know if I know that one. What?
I tried out for Guys and Dolls. I did not make it. I was sad. I still love that one. In fact, my daughter's high school performed Guys and Dolls last year, so I got to go see it and kind of relive my childhood for a moment. But yeah, I was in Anything Goes, and that was the only play that I was in. But and I was a backup dancer because I was not an actress.
So fun. It's all good though. There's a part for everyone. All the parts make you can't do it without everyone.
Absolutely. Well, listen, reflecting on your career journey, let's talk about some of these big milestones, because obviously you didn't just start off as a CMO. We even talked about your journey at WorkRamp, starting as the VP of marketing, and then you went to the CMO role. So let's highlight some of those pivotal moments, or what were some of those big decisions that really contributed to your ascent to the C-suite?
Yeah, even coming out of college, I didn't necessarily have CMO as my North Star goal, but I did know that I wanted to be in tech. My father had worked in sales and marketing at startups and in tech throughout his career. So, that was kind of modeled for me, which was one of my goals. Let's just get into tech. But honestly, coming out of school, my main goal, this is a little bit of a backstory here, but my main goal was actually finding a company that would sponsor me to stay in the United States. I'm a Canadian citizen. I had gone to school at UC Santa Barbara here in the US, and I had what they call optional practical training, a visa that you get when you graduate either undergrad or graduate school here. And I needed to find a company that would sponsor me beyond my optional practical training timeline. And so that's what I did. I found a company that was actually Taiwanese based, and they had offices in Long Beach. And that's where I was living at the time in Southern California. And they said, we'll sponsor you. Let's make it happen. And so there, I actually started to do marketing work. I saw a gap when I got there. I was actually doing some analyst work when I first got in. But I started to take on more and more marketing opportunities there. So think, helping plan the trade shows and do promotion around the trade shows we were doing. I wrote some of our press releases. I did work with some of like the media publishers that we were working with. At the time, it was like print magazines, a lot of print magazines were doing ads and like, articles and stuff there. And I realized that I really liked marketing. And so putting the two things together, I thought, okay, I'm going to do marketing and I'm going to do marketing at a tech company. That was like my next goal. And so eventually was able to get sponsored at CA Technologies, which at the time was a 14,000 person public company, huge enterprise organization, also selling like real enterprise software. Like they started in mainframe, hundreds of solutions across the organization. I was working in a business unit that sold backup and recovery and disaster recovery software through the channel. When I got hired there. And I just honestly was basically started as a marketing coordinator there and was just, again, doing kind of everything across the board. And that's really, I think, when in the first couple of years working there, where I was like, okay, I want to be in leadership. I want to be a marketing leader. I still don't think I had CMO as like the main goal, but I knew I wanted to be in leadership. And so I took steps from there to, work my way into leadership. One thing I did was my part-time MBA. So that was definitely like, part of the decision to just get more exposure to kind of everything that you could think about in business right through that program. And also just started to work on skills and kind of throw my name in the hat, if you will, to be considered for a leadership position. And once that actually opened up on the team I was on, I was put into the position as director of North America marketing for the business unit I was working for. And that was honestly like one of the biggest pivotal moments of my career. I mean, I'm sure we can talk more about that, but I'll pause and see if you have any questions about anything I said so far and then, keep going from there.
Well, I want to talk about this because I find that there's a lot of folks that either stay with big companies or they stay with small companies. And you had a really diverse experience because you did some early stage companies, right? And you've done later stage and you've done CA is obviously not small by any means.
Totally.
So when you think about your career and the decisions you've had to make to determine where you'd end up, right, for different roles and new opportunities, was there a preference? Was that part of your decision making? Were you intentional about diversifying your experiences with big and small and startup and established enterprises?
Yeah. So I'd say in the beginning, no. I was just honestly, again, looking for that, like that tech company I could work for. CA happened to, work out, which was awesome. And it was a great experience working there. I had so many different learnings from that. But I would say where then I really started to get intentional, what ended up happening when I was at CA, the business unit I was working for divested to private equity. And that was, again, huge learning experience. We carved out $100 million global business and for all intents and purposes started, not exactly a new business, but like you're kind of doing a lot of things from scratch, right? And I was in the leadership position and got kind of up close and personal with, presenting to a board and having to like start a new office in a new location. There was just so much that went into that. And that was the moment where I was living in San Francisco, was working for this company that was now headquartered in Minnesota, private equity. And I thought, I really like this kind of building newness thing that's happening here. Wonder what it would actually be like to go do that at a startup, right? A venture-backed startup. And that's when I intentionally actually went out and started to look for a leadership role at a VC-backed startup and ended up at Lever. And so that was probably the first moment where I thought I really liked the building part versus kind of bigger company thing, wanted to get that exposure. And I just loved Lever. Like I was employee number 64, one of the first members on the marketing team with a couple of other people working for their first ever CMO who had only started a couple months before me. And that was just like the best experience. I had so much fun building the team, building out the function. I got to hire. I also got to do a lot of stuff myself. I was leading demand gen and marketing operations, but you get so much exposure, as anybody knows, when you're at a startup like that. And so from there, I really wanted to go into another demand gen role and lead a bigger team at a bigger scale. And so went to SurveyMonkey, which was still a mid, about 800 people when I joined. So not a tiny startup, but like probably, more mid-size, and got more exposure there. And then, ended up when I wanted to take on the head of marketing role, which we can talk about, wanted to go back to a smaller company to do that, and ended up at WorkRamp. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a journey, but I think actually having those different experiences across big and smaller companies has been huge, and just like making me who I am, making me the leader that I am today. So.
Okay, well, this has been part of a conversation starter that's come out of some of these podcasts that I've got to ask you. So as you're determining where you're going to take your career, right? When you're evaluating these companies, because we always say we're interviewing companies as much as they're interviewing us.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you had to evaluate as you assessed, is this the right organization for me? Like, what is your decision-making criteria? What are like the 3 things that stand out to you that like, you're like, these are my musts in any company or any opportunity I'm going to take on?
Yeah. Honestly, the first is obviously going to be the people, right? Do you think you can see yourself working collaboratively and effectively with the people? And that's your leadership team. That's, the people that you're going to be on your team. If you're leading a team, that's your peers. Number one is just, is this a place where I'm going to want to show up every day and be able to be my best and be myself and do great work? Hands down, top reason that, or top thing you're considering. But beyond that, the other 2 things, and 2 of the reasons, honestly, why I came to WorkRamp, one, are you actually solving customers' challenges, right? Are there customers out there that are advocates for your product and that you're really helping them make their lives easier or, impact their businesses? That's something I absolutely look for. And honestly, when I was joining WorkRamp, it was one of the reasons I joined, because there were people like you, lots of customer advocates out there that were just so thrilled to be partnered with WorkRamp. And, same thing, SurveyMonkey, same thing, Lever, definitely a reason and a criteria for joining a company. And then third, actually, and this kind of, I guess, goes hand in hand with the customer part of it as well. But like, do I really believe in the product and the vision? And, is there an opportunity to really, make whatever you're working on, marketing or selling, is it a big enough TAM really? So those are the 3 things that I definitely take a look at whenever I'm looking at a role.
I think it's great. I think you're very much in line with what we hear a lot of the females that we've had on the show talk about. Now, one other thing I want to spend a few minutes on is you did get your MBA and you were kind of doing this while you were working, right? So you didn't go straight from your undergrad and say, okay, great, I'm going to go pursue this MBA. Do you think that there were advantages to waiting and then going through this program? Because I know that there's a lot of folks that still debate whether or not they should continue on with education after they've already landed a job, or maybe their career's got some momentum. So you're somebody who decided, yes, it was worth it for me to make this investment in myself. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was something that, again, I hadn't necessarily like come out of undergrad thinking I'm going to go back and get my MBA. It kind of organically happened after I started working. Honestly, so again, I wanted to be in a leadership position, and I talked to a couple of people that were in leadership positions earlier in their career, and specifically the general manager of the business unit I was working for. He was pretty young, honestly, when he got that position. And I asked him, like, what do you think? How did you do that? Right. And obviously there's a lot of different things, but he shared with me that getting an MBA was a big part of what he felt like helped him even be considered for this kind of general manager position. And so that really stuck with me. I could accelerate my career if I, potentially had this on my resume. And the other thing, honestly, I wanted to work. That was very important to me. And honestly, I had to work to be able to do my MBA. And so I was fortunate enough to be living in San Francisco, where there was a part-time program at University of San Francisco that I could do, while working. And so that made it, an easier choice for me, because I knew I needed to do the part-time program just for it to fit into my life. And so, I do think that, there's obviously benefits to going to a full-time program. There's, you could just have a different experience, but those were some of the reasons why I decided to do it and to do it part-time. And I think there is a benefit of waiting, because by then, again, I wasn't doing it just to do it, just to check an MBA. I really had a goal in mind, I guess, of why I was doing it. I wanted to get into the, a leadership position more quickly. That helped me also shape the types of courses that I took and things like that. Right. So for me, it was a great experience. I actually don't think you need an MBA to go into leadership. I don't, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a must have, but for me at the time, it was the right decision. And I'm glad I waited a couple of years and did it part-time. So
I love that. I'm still now I'm in my mid 40s and I'm like, do I do it? Do I not do it? It's me and my husband have these great debates all the time. I'm like, do I need it or do I want it enough where I think it's going to make a difference at this stage? And I'm like, I don't know. I scratch my head all the time, but it's something that I'm still I wish I had done it, or I would like to still do it. So who knows? Now, obviously, you've had a lot of interesting moves in your career, right? And you've taken on different roles. We know that all of this change and this growth and getting to leadership doesn't come without some battle scars. So when you think back on your experiences, what were some of the significant challenges or obstacles that you faced, and how'd you overcome them?
Yeah. I mean, going back to what I was talking about earlier, the first thing that comes to mind for me, one of the big moments, right, was when I did become a manager for the first time. I was, had no management experience, obviously, and I was promoted to a director position, leading a team of people that all had more experience than me. And I totally get that, right? I value experience a lot. I understand you want to be working for someone that you feel like you can learn from, that you feel like there is going to be a great partnership. And you have to earn that as a leader. You don't just get that just because you get a director title. And so that was definitely, something I had to navigate through. It was definitely not just okay, I'm a director, this is going to be amazing. It was very, very challenging in a good way, not in a bad way, but challenging to make sure that I could earn the trust, earn the respect, earn the partnership, right, with the people that were on the team, who clearly all had, more literal years of experience than me. One of the things that really helped me through that was having an amazing boss who was also a mentor at the time, who really partnered with me. She knew, right, that this was going to be a challenge for me, but she believed in me and knew in my potential. And so we worked together to overcome, some of the just obstacles that come with that type of a move. But that's definitely one of the more challenging years, I would say, coming into that position, and just, having to be, and I also don't think you're actually prepared for everything. You're friends with people on the team, and then you take over, and then your dynamic totally changes, and you're like, whoa, wait, but we know each other. But it's totally different when you become the boss, right? So definitely one of the first big learning moments, I would say, in my career was that experience.
Now let's talk about, well, I mean, honestly, everything you just talked about in that experience could actually be their own episodes, because I feel like hearing you say that brought me back to a place in my career, thinking about the first time I had to manage people with more years of experience. We forget that even the age gap there makes a big difference. It changes the dynamic, male, female, but not having the resource to do that, shifting from being someone's colleague and friend to now being their manager. Those are all literally individual episodes that I feel like we don't spend enough time talking through all of those. So I'm so glad to hear you kind of point those out as challenges that a lot of folks are having to face. Now, obviously, you've built some great teams out there. So let's spend a few minutes and talk about, did you ever struggle with, or were there ever any challenges with feeling like you're getting the right hires and building and scaling organizations? Because I know it's some of the companies you've been a part of, that's been a part of the role. And anything there we can unpack.
Yeah, I mean, people say this, and it's so incredibly true. Who you hire is literally the maybe most important thing you do as a manager. And you absolutely, need to hire better than you as much as you possibly can. And also, I think the other thing that everybody says that is just I cannot reinforce enough is that also you need to know when something is not working on your team and you need to be able to make adjustments very quickly, right? And so I would say that, building teams, inheriting teams, that has just been, it's hard. It's not always easy to make those decisions. And, it like you can also hire raw, I haven't made every hire I've ever made has not been perfect. But I think that, if you really focus on hiring as like the most important thing, you're going to be successful. And it's a hard thing, right? And sometimes you just do learn through experience, but I can't hit home enough. I've had to learn the hard way a couple of times on that element. So.
Very good. And I can't agree more. Like, you got to hire the right teams beneath you, especially as you're a leader and you're scaling your businesses, right? You've had large teams and you understand the importance of being able to delegate and trust the leaders that you build beneath you to actually help run organizations, because you're just one person.
Yeah. One thing too is that it's a reflection of you too, right? Like your team is a reflection of you. So if you, don't hire, for what your organization needs, or if if there's challenges on the team that you're not addressing, like that is a reflection of your leadership. And so it really is, I think, the most important thing you can do as a leader is hire well. So.
I couldn't agree more. The She's So Sweet podcast is brought to you by Client Success. Client Success is an all-in-one customer success platform to help post-sale implementation and success teams manage customers from new to renew. Through an industry-leading platform approach, Client Success gives businesses an in-depth view into customer health, product usage trends, along with churn and risk data, so that your team can not only retain customers, but help them grow as well. Whether it's managing customer onboarding workflows in shared portals, building custom health scores, tracking sentiment with NPS surveys, or doing more with less through AI and automations, Client Success gives customer success professionals a true one-stop platform to manage all aspects of the customer journey. To learn more about the industry's fastest to implement customer success platform, visit www.clientsuccess.com. That's Client Success. Simple, powerful customer success. So just obviously being a leader, navigating all of these, what have been some of the learnings or lessons that have come out for you as a leader navigating these? Because again, this probably wasn't your second or third pandemic, and it wasn't your second or third recession. So what were some of the takeaways for you as a leader during these challenging times?
Yeah. One I would say is that you do have to lead by example. That is one of the learnings. Everybody is definitely throughout COVID, throughout, some of the headwinds macroeconomically and everything, people are scared. It's their day to day, what's going to happen. And so again, you can feel those things yourself, but being able to, I think, lead by example is a really important learning. I also think adapting and embracing change, and being able to just understand that in uncertain times, there are going to be things that are unpredictable, and it's not always going to be rosy. But if you go in with the mindset, understanding that, you're just going to be in a better spot, right? It doesn't mean that you have to embrace every single thing that comes your way, but just embracing the idea that this might not look like anything you've seen before, and you kind of have to be ready for things to be adjusted or to be different. I think even just going in with that mindset is very, very helpful. I also think that people are very resilient. So at the same time that you're leading right through these things, like lead on your team, tell your team when you are feeling like, okay, you know what, I actually don't know the answer to this, or like, I am also feeling a little bit uncertain, but I also know that we're very strong and we've gotten through all these other things together and we can do that. So it's not like you have to be, just like bottling it all in. You can really, I think, lean on and partner with your team through, uncertainty. And honestly, probably one of the biggest things is just keep trying, right? Like you're not always going to have a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet ever actually in anything you're doing. So just keep trying, right? Try different things, see where you can get green shoots of success. If you can start to see something is successful, continue to invest in it. those are the like, you just got to keep trying. I think having consistency and having persistence, honestly, is a huge skill set. And, has really also been proven as we've gone through some of these kind of crazy times as of recent. So.
Well, it sounds like you do a great job of leading as a human, right? Authentically and with empathy. And I think that that's probably why your teams really enjoy working under you. Well, listen, we gotta change the subject, right? We gotta make this a little happier because we can get into all this doom and gloom. I want to focus on some of your successes because obviously those are the things that probably helped catapult you to where you are today. So, and I always say women especially do not spend enough time tooting our own horn and celebrating all of the great things we've done professionally. So when you think back on your career, what are some of those successes? What are your proudest moments or accomplishments so far in your career?
I will start with going back to the hiring part, right? My favorite thing in my career is having worked with amazing people and then being able to see them go on to be successful in their own careers. It's just so amazing, and then you get to learn from them. I mean, you're always learning from your team, even when they're, when you're leading them, but it's just so much fun watching people go be successful. I was so lucky in my career to have several, women leaders, but in particular, the CMO at WorkRamp, Leela Srinivasan, was my boss at at Lever, and then was my boss at SurveyMonkey as well. And she just like modeled how to really invest in employees and, was just such an advocate for everybody that ever worked for her. And like, I tried to take that as one of my, leading principles as a leader. And so watching people go on and be successful in their careers is one of my favorite things. I would say just on a more personal level, one of my favorite accomplishments, honestly, what we've built at WorkRamp is just, to me, it's just amazing. Like there was absolutely some amazing marketing happening when I joined. WorkRamp had always been invested in customers. We had some great customer marketing and product marketing work before I joined. And in the last 2.5 years, we've been able to build on that and really, I think, build a prominent brand, right, in the LMS category. We have awesome content, customers that are continuing to rave about us. I've been really proud of what we've built at WorkRamp, and, marketing has just taken such a strategic role, honestly, in company growth, which has been fun to be part of. So proud of that for sure.
Well, I'm sure if I asked Ted, I'm sure he would agree that you've left a lasting impression on WorkRamp. And I've been so excited to watch the trajectory of the company and your role. And so I think that's amazing. And I'm so glad to hear that. Let's take a moment and talk more about how we're investing back. So one of the common themes here throughout everything you've shared with us is really about your investment in people. And that's very evident in your leadership style and how you talk about the teams that you've led. But one of my favorite sayings is empowered women empower women. And while I know that we have a lot of fantastic male listeners and I'm thrilled to have them, I want to hear more about how you're empowering other women, especially as they think about taking on potentially leadership roles in their future.
Yeah. So my whole team right now is actually all women. So definitely, I know it's amazing. Definitely we'll just talk about, things we're doing right now to empower our team to go on and be successful. I mean, in general, I want to understand where people on my team, the women on my team, what their goals are. And again, I have been helped throughout my career from all of my bosses. I've had incredible leaders that have helped me get to where I am today. And so I want to pay that forward for sure. So just basic understanding of like, what do you like to work on? What are some of your goals? And then figuring out ways to go support those goals is really important to me. One of the things that I love to do is, to empower women, like, I love to introduce people in my network, right? If someone's interested in going and learning about something or, is looking to make a connection, like being able to just open up your network is one way that you can go empower people to, learn, have discussions, understand, okay, I like, I want to be a CCO one day. Let's talk to Kristi about how she got there. And just encouraging people to go have those conversations, grow their own networks. We actually have a formal mentorship program at WorkRamp. And one of my leaders is participating in that right now, where we have partnered her like in a formal capacity, right, with someone who she meets with once a week, who has, gone all the way up to CMO at big companies, and she's learning from her as an extra, resource really to accelerate her career. So I think it all comes down to when you're empowering women, understanding their goals, supporting their goals, and helping them actually make strides against those goals is very, very important. And then I would also just say, I'm a mom, right? I have a 4.5-year-old little girl, and I really appreciate flexibility in my, role and support, and being able to support my family how I need to, as well as working. I absolutely, try to support. It doesn't have to just be moms. But just support kind of flexible working, right? In general, everybody has different things going on at home, whether you're a mom or whether you're, other things that you might be doing. I really try to support women in like understanding that there's often a lot on women's plates, and we need to be able to support flexible work however they need to get work done. So I'm a big supporter of just what do you need? Like, what time do you need so you can do all the things you need to do in your life? So those are just some of the ways that come to mind.
Well, that's a great segue to kind of my next point that I want to spend some time on. One of the themes that has come out of almost every episode here is that there really isn't exactly work-life balance when you're in the C-suite. And it really is something you've got to try to figure out. And everyone's got different tricks and, ways that they've figured out how to balance their personal lives and their professional careers. So as you think about balancing your C-level career and your personal life, right? You've got a 4-year-old at home, which is, they're not driving yet. So they very much depends on mommy. How are you creating balance in your world that allows you to kind of be present in both areas?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Like the lines are blurred. Your life is your life. And so you're always going to have kind of, bleeding into work and life. They're kind of one and the same. But what I really try to do is I do set aside specific time. You can see it on my calendar. If I pulled up my calendar, you would see it every night. Starting at 4:30 Pacific, I have block in my calendar that says, Jack is with James. And so I don't take any meetings after that time. And that's when I go spend time with my family. And that's really important to me, right? So just literally having it as a calendar block. I get up early to do work. I'll do meetings any other time, but once it's 4:30, unless it's like critically important, I'm going to be with my daughter. I actually am I try to be a leader that takes PTO, and I do. Like I have time that I'm off. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, I usually do work during PTO. There, very rarely has there been a week or two, if I'm off, where I'm not totally checking in. That just comes with some of the job. But I also do take the PTO. I go offline. I don't have meetings during that time. So I do try to, basically carve out the times that I am not going to be working. But it's hard. It's not, it's not easy. I am fortunate where I have a very supportive husband, and we, do split a lot of the work that needs to happen at home, which is awesome. We're very fortunate to have childcare. So also having help, has definitely allowed me to have some work-life balance. I know that's not the case for everybody. But I think the main, TLDR is like just having specific time that you are trying to be unplugged and offline is critically important. I try to do that at a reasonable rate. So
that's great. And I do think that is important. And it sounds like you've done a great job of creating what I like to refer to as like these social contracts, right? With the folks that you work with, because they know and they respect that time, right? So you've done a great job of saying, this is the time that I can't be disrupted. I do need this for my family, right? They need you too. And so I think being very intentional about creating what kind of balance works for you is important. And those social contracts, I think, go a long way. I think what I've done successfully is be able to communicate my boundaries with my teams, right? Like, and for me, like I'm an early riser, but that means I also go to bed at a reasonable hour, which means 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. My phone's on do not disturb. I'm in bed. I am sleeping. Which working with West Coast folks, maybe that's not super helpful. It's 6 p.m., 7 p.m. for them. And it's like, I have to sleep. So, but people know my schedule. They know when I'm available. And it sounds like you've done an excellent job of establishing that. So good for you.
I would also add that it also goes back to what I was mentioning about like supporting flexible work. Like, I think if you also show people that you respect their boundaries
right.
and, like I know I just said sometimes I work on PTO, but I'm always like, team, when you're on PTO, do not come online. I don't want to see you in Slack. Like, don't respond to an email. Like, just be on PTO. And I think if you also really, truly, genuinely show people that you respect their time, right, it helps too, just in terms of like, yeah, we get it. We all have other things we're doing, and it just creates a better dynamic across the board. So
you said it perfectly. And I think leading by example is what leaders need to do. So I think you're doing a great job of that. Let's take a minute to just talk back to advice that you wish you would have had. Because I think this is always so important, right? You've learned a ton in your career so far. And I'm sure all those learnings didn't come easy. So when you think back, what is a piece of advice that you wish someone had given you earlier in your career? And then what kind of impact do you think that would have had?
Yeah, this one might sound a bit cheesy, but I do feel, and even now I have to tell myself this, sometimes it's like, you can do it. You'll be able to do whatever it is that you take on. You've been able to do every single thing so far. I mean, maybe you've had some failures, but you learn from those, right? But generally speaking, you can do it, and you just kind of have to try. So I would, I don't know. I even going back in my career, like, what have I tried for, different roles earlier, things like that. Maybe I would have if I had known that, but I definitely think just trying is super important. I also like, I think that now that I am more mature in my career, I've been doing things for a long time. Admitting what you don't know is also okay. I think a lot of times, especially, if you're in your first leadership position and you're, maybe this isn't even probably only women, but if you're in your first leadership position or whatever, you're leading a cross-functional effort, you might feel like you have to have every single answer. I actually think that it's okay to say, I actually don't know this. I'll go figure it out, or I'll find a way to, to do it. But that's not actually something that I know how to do or that I've done before. I think is totally fine. And I don't know, I've definitely been in situations where I've like not been, maybe not honest, but like not like very scared to admit that I don't know something. But it's okay if you don't know something. So those are some things I wish. I don't know. Maybe people probably did tell me that, and it's some of it was experience, but those are things I wish I could have maybe, internalized more when I was younger, for sure.
No, but it's true. I think that we also we hold ourselves to a certain standard where we expect to know all the answers and to be able to just figure things out. And we get to this crossroad where, guess what? We're going to be doing something for the very first time at some point. And when we do it the second and third time, great. We'll already have had that experience, but all of these experiences will come at a first time for us all. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's okay. Right. But asking for help, leaning on your resources, or saying, I don't know, I'll go figure it out. Those are superpowers. And I feel like they're really underestimated, because being able to do that is what makes great leaders.
Yeah. And I'll give you a specific example just to illustrate this better. And I think, if you come up through marketing, right, usually marketers are in one of three categories. You're a demand gen marketer, you're a product marketer, or you're like a brand content type of marketer, right? And when you go into a CMO role, you are not going to have deep experience on all three of those dimensions. Event marketing too, right? So there's just like so many different ways that you can come up. And so you have to be able to admit, and I had to do this when I got to WorkRamp, like, I've come up through demand gen. I know a lot about the other the other parts of marketing. I've partnered with those before, but I haven't led it. And I haven't necessarily done all of the hands-on work. And then it goes back to what we were talking about. So you have to hire super well, but like, there's no way that I could have ever known, directly, perfectly how to do these other parts of the job. And I was very upfront about that, when talking to Ted, when interviewing at WorkRamp. And it's actually, it's been great that they knew that, because it does help with, when you're working on different projects. I mean, it's just, you have to admit where you don't have experience sometimes. So that's a real life example of how that's kind of come full circle, I guess.
I love that. And listen, your journey has been so amazing, and obviously it doesn't end here. But before we wrap up today, I do want us to leave our listeners with one big takeaway. Now, obviously you've given us so many little nuggets along the way today, but if you had to leave everybody with one last note, what would you say?
I think I've referenced this kind of indirectly a couple of times throughout the conversation. Having a mentor or mentors has been incredibly helpful throughout my career. I've had, obviously, my mentors that have been bosses. I also have mentors that, I lean on for advice, but it is absolutely, especially as you get into leadership positions, you probably know this, Kristi, right? Like, you have less people that you can really, that are doing the same thing you're doing, especially if you're at the C-suite in your organization. You're the only C-suite person running marketing, right? And so having a mentor is extremely helpful. You can bounce ideas. You can, am I crazy if I think this? And, see, kind of gauge where you're at, validate. A lot, people have worked on similar things than you are going to have really great insights. So get mentors, get your bench, whatever you want to call it. I think that's an extremely helpful tool as you're, moving through your career, and you get to, talk to amazing people that you get to have amazing relationships with. So added bonus, I guess, to having a mentor, right?
I think it's so important. And I think it's an amazing point to leave everyone with today. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we started this podcast, was to share stories and to give access to folks like yourself who are doing amazing things and who are also committed to helping the future leaders. And so, Jack, thank you so much for your time today. Your journey is really, truly inspiring. I love the work that you've been doing at WorkRamp. I'm excited to see the continued success come out of the organization. I want to just thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for inviting me, Kristi. So fun. And I guess I'll leave your leader or your listeners with, I am always happy to honestly have, conversations. When I took the role at WorkRamp or was interviewing for this, I reached out to 6 CMOs that all got on the phone with me, kind of just to say, yep, I'll help you out. So I'll pay it forward if anybody, is out there wanting to have a conversation, would love to. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I love that, Jack. And honestly, you've kind of lead by example, and everyone who's worked with you really gets the honor of seeing your humility, your vulnerability, and your human leadership style. So I'm sure the team really loves that about you. Well, listen, everyone, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Hi, guys. I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays, of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.